G'day ladies and gents, welcome to War Thunder with Mags, and welcome to my almost first impressions of the J2M3. Now, disclaimers apply, my first impressions are normally aircraft that are completely stock. This one is not. Now, at this time, as you can see, I've almost spaded the aircraft. However, in the videos you're about to watch, that is not the case. This aircraft is not fully spaded. I do, however, have two upgrades already unlocked on it. Specifically, I have the fuselage repair done, and the compressor, and I was working on the offensive 20mm cannons. This is the first thing I want to talk about with this aircraft, and it's an important thing to note. This should be your grind path on this plane as soon as you have it available. The Tier 1 and Tier 2 unlocks only require that you unlock one upgrade to get to the next level. Take one, either fuselage repair or radiator, whichever you prefer, compressor or airframe. I recommend compressor for this one for the extra engine power, give you a bit more climb rate, and get down to these 20mm cannon belts as fast as you can with this plane. Let me show you why. These are the default belts. These are what you're stuck with until you unlock the offensive 20mm cannon shells. Now what you've got here is a tracer shell, a fragmentation incendiary shell, and an armor-piercing incendiary shell in TFI-FI API configuration. This is pretty shithouse. The tracer shell is effectively useless in combat, so the first shell that comes out of your gun, the one that you actually see come out of the cannons, is not going to do any damage or is very unlikely to do anything serious to the targets. Fragmentation incendiaries. Now these can be good, but incendiary shells, the way they work in War Thunder, they only will ignite if you hit a component in an aircraft that is considered to be flammable. And they won't ignite every single time, so it's not a guaranteed fire. Incendiary shells work great on guns that fire a lot of bullets, looking at MGs, American 50 caliber machine guns, or really any 7.7, 7.62, 50 caliber guns. Things with lots of velocity, lots of extremely high rate of fire, get lots of bullets out all at once, work really well, because you've got to hit something that's flammable to get the incendiaries to ignite first. But that's not a guaranteed chance that they are going to. You then have to put multiple shots in. There's a little bit of RNG involved in whether or not those are actually going to ignite. If you're pumping lots of shots into a target, the chance of you actually lighting on fire is very high. Japanese 20mm cannons don't have a particularly high rate of fire, and this belt pretty much relies on you getting a fire on target to really do any significant damage. You can take targets out without lighting a fire up, but generally that's what you're really looking for with a heavy incendiary belt. And these just don't work well enough. There's no explosive, there's nothing else in there. What you want to do is get down and get into these omni-purpose belts, which is one armor-piercing incendiary, and then you've got 2 rounds of high explosive. These universal belts kick ass, but you really, really, really need to stay away or get away from those default belts as fast as you can. Actually, the worst offender is actually the API shell. Armor-piercing shells are great when you're trying to take out bombers, which is what you should be looking at in this plane when you first unlock it. It's very good with 420mm cannons for that. However, API shells or armor-piercing shells in general will have a tendency to go through some of the lighter aircraft that you'll be encountering without doing any damage at all. So we've spoken about the cannons and the upgrades, but we should probably talk about the plane itself now. The J2M3 is an Era 4 Battle Rating 5 Japanese single-engine fighter that appears just after the Shindenkais on the Japanese Zero line. Its placement in the tree is a little odd, considering that the Shindenkais have a much higher battle rating, and it's probably part of the reason why these planes are not as common as I thought they would be. The J2M3 is armed with 4 20mm cannons with 800 rounds of ammunition between them. That's 200 per gun, which is a massive ammunition load for a Japanese aircraft. And as you're about to see, its flight style sits somewhere between a boom and zoom aircraft and a pure energy fighter. The J2M3 is probably the closest analogue the Japanese have to the Americans' P-51D. Now, unsurprisingly for those of you who have seen what the Focke-Wulf 190A5 Premium flies like amongst Japanese fighters, this aircraft performs extremely well and synergizes extremely well with other Japanese planes. As you can see below, Zeros and other highly maneuverable Japanese aircraft tend to engage the front lines of an enemy force. The J2M3s fly and hold altitude, and then when the time is right, fall from the sky and remove the targets. The energy retention on the J2M3 is excellent as well. As soon as you've struck a target, you should nose up immediately and get all your altitude back ready to repeat as fast as you can. You want to maintain at least a couple of thousand feet on your enemy at all times, so you always have the option to dive. You do not want to be engaging from underneath at any time. It's also worth remembering that the control surfaces will lock up when you start exceeding about 680 kilometers per hour, so you do not want to be at too high an angle of attack at too low an altitude when you pass that speed. If you're going to, immediately pull up. Do not allow yourself to go below about 2,000 feet at any more than a 45-degree angle. Once you exceed 680 kilometers an hour at that angle of attack, at that altitude, you will severely struggle to pull out of the dive. Now, due to how this plane synergizes with the rest of the Japanese forces, it's probably best that you think of yourself as a support plane. Keep a close eye on what the Zeros on your team are doing, what they're engaging, and float around above them. Try and stay in the clouds so you won't be detected. Once the Zeros have engaged their targets, go target priority. What you want to do is try and keep that Zero alive as often as you can. Think of it as your bait. You need it alive in order to be able to freely boom and zoom your targets at will. So, highly threatening targets, you want to eliminate Spitfires first as a priority, as you saw me do. Anything that has the ability to maneuver or carries a lot of guns that could potentially be a threat to the Zero should be removed next. Once the immediate threats in the area have been cleared, what I tend to do is leave whatever the Zero is engaging entirely alone, and pretty much only target things that are trying to get on its tail, and there is always somebody that is trying to get on a Zero's tail. Eliminate those targets and you've just kept your teammate alive and had opportunities in anywhere between 2 and 3 aircraft during the course of that fight. And if you're lucky and a good shot, maybe 2 or 3 actual kills under your belt as well. Now, as you just saw, I detected a Spitfire and a British Mustang above me. I immediately performed a split S and started heading back towards Allied forces and towards the Allied runway. As I said earlier on, you do not want to engage targets that are above you in this plane. Unlike Japanese fighters like the Zero, this plane's performance is reliant on it having an altitude advantage on its enemies at all times. If somebody is above you, you are playing into their advantages, not into yours. While the energy retention of the aircraft is very good, trying to spike aircraft from underneath, aircraft that are potentially more maneuverable than you are, well, let's just say if they're competent, it rarely ends well. The safest course of action in these situations is to get the hell out of the area. Dive away, use your dive speed and your energy retention to get the fastest speed you possibly can and then level out and maintain it for as long as you can. Head towards Allied forces that can provide you cover or Allied bases that can provide you with flak cover, and once you're in these positions, reinitiate a climb. Turn the rest of the energy you have back into altitude, get back up into the sky, turn around and go back towards the enemies you detected, but this time try and get above them. Now, speaking of rate of climb, and this is an interesting issue with the J2M3. Now, historically the J2M3 was an incredibly fast climbing aircraft. Its historical rate of climb is actually 4,600 feet a minute. It's insanely quick. However, there is an interesting bug in the stat cards. With all performance modifications applied to the aircraft, it only lists the J2M3 as having a 2,526 feet a minute climb rate, which is actually pitiful for an Era 4 aircraft, and especially for one that was known in real life for its capability for rapid climbing. Thankfully, that does appear to be a case of bugged stat cards on a new plane. The plane in-game climbs at around the 4,600 mark. It rips into the sky very quickly. You can see it here, how quickly I'm gaining altitude back over targets. I've actually got to stop climbing. I gave myself too much of a wide arc here and have to level out and get airspeed back up because I was about to climb to the point where I actually wouldn't be able to dive without dropping airspeed in order to get down on this target. So once again, ignore the stat cards. This plane, fully upgraded, will climb with premium Spitfires. So once again, down into the dive. It looks like the Spitfire I detected before has been eliminated. The Mustang Mark 1 is all that's left. Pushing out past 740, I'm full elevation here trying to pull up. I get a nice solid hit, but compression lock-up, I couldn't keep the guns on target well enough. Mustang is trying to follow, so just point the nose straight up and just climb away. He will stall out before he ever has a chance to follow, and it looks like he's already beginning to stall out. In fact, most aircraft that attempt to follow a J2M3 at high speed into a burst climb will stall out long before the J2M3 will. Gently bring the nose around to line up for the next pass. The A6M5 is going to have a crack first. Let him have his shot. It's no biggie. If he gets the target, he gets the target. If he doesn't, I'll hit it next. Already pushing out past 600 kilometers an hour, coming back. The Mustang, this is the last guy on the enemy team, and he has no chance. He's putting up a hell of a fight, I'll give him that much. Burst a little low. He rolls, just keeps out of the guns. Now I pulled back on the throttle there because I wanted to make sure I didn't go into the zone where this plane starts suffering control stiffening. I wanted to make sure I kept the guns on target. But the Mustang loses control and puts it into a side of a mountain, and I get the kill anyway. So that is the end of this match. So let's go and check out the results. So we came in at second place for the team with 2 kills, 1 assist, Professional X2, Shadow Strike Streak X2, Final Blow, Terror of the Sky and Bulletproof awards, 60,355 Silver Lions, 6,126 research points, and as you can see this plane was perfectly stock in this battle. This was the battle where I completed my fuselage repair. So once more into the breach, and this time let's have a look around the cockpit. Now overall I actually quite enjoyed the cockpit of this aircraft. Nosewood visibility is a little low, the engine cowling is very large in front of the plane, however you've got good visibility to the left and right of the cowling in front of the wings. You've got good rearward visibility except directly behind you. It's not perfect, it is by no means the best cockpit the Japanese have available for sim battle, but there's definitely some good visibility there. Actually, I have to say, the overall appearance of the aircraft didn't do much for me when I first saw it, but it has grown on me since flying the plane. So, first target detected, it's a Spitfire. We're at 20,000 feet, and I have the altitude advantage, so we're going to try and convince him that he shouldn't be up here, either by killing him or making him dive. And this is the second part of the J2M's job. Because it can get to this altitude so easily, and its performance is so good at this altitude in comparison to most of the other aircraft that it will encounter, it's got to get planes like this Spitfire down at low altitudes where the Zeros can deal with them more effectively. Now as you can see, I got a nice solid direct hit to that Spitfire's wing there, and the plane's still flying. That's the default belts. If I had the Omnipurpose available, that would have been a kill. I would have sheared the Spitfire's wing straight off, and I would have been looking for my next targets. Instead, I'm having to continue this fight. This here is exactly why I suggest get those 20mm belts unlocked as fast as you can and get off the default rounds. Once again, I'm going to put a burst into this Spitfire. And there we go. Critical strike, damage to right aileron. If I had been running the Omnipurpose belts or had them unlocked in this plane at the time of this battle, that again would have blown his wing off. If you're just about to unlock this aircraft or you're working on it now, do yourself a favour, get the Omnipurpose belts unlocked, and after that you can pretty much unlock the plane exactly how you see fit. While the upgrades do increase the performance of the aircraft across all levels, obviously, there's no real priority order that you need to get the performance mods in. Just whatever order that suits your personal preference. Just get those belts unlocked. So we have a number of fighters at high altitude, and I've decided I don't want to let this Spitfire go just yet, so I've put it into a dive and I'm chasing him down. And it looks like I found the whole enemy team. Holy crap, that's a lot of red. The Spitfire was doing the smart thing and diving into the rest of his team for cover. So I break off, once again, as always, work from the top down. This Typhoon is the highest altitude fighter the enemy team has. Kill it first, and then we'll work our way to the bottom. Now the Typhoon pulls into a tight left. I cannot follow him, and this is one of those odd situations where the Japanese fighter is not manoeuvrable enough to catch the British one. So break off, get some shots into this Spitfire, and then turn all the energy that I've created back into altitude. Go straight up, get above the enemy team. I do not want to be down there with them. The Typhoon that outturned me before was coming back around to engage, wasn't expecting me to go up. As you can see, he's turned off to engage somebody else, loop it back around and dive back in. Now as I said before, Spitfires are always high priority targets as they are one of the few aircraft that are able to give issues to Japanese Zeros, so pick the next one. I wasn't able to get the one that's on our Zero's tail, it was too steep a dive. Make a shot at the next one, unfortunately, miss completely. Pull it straight back into the vertical, go back for altitude, I'll loop it back over and have another crack at him in just a moment. And the J2M3 really does show a complete role reversal. It's normally the Japanese fighters that are getting boomed, and the Allied fighters that are doing the booming. Well, turnabout is fair play. And it looks like we've run into Alfred again. He must be sick and tired of seeing me by now. I've chased him from 20,000 feet all the way to the deck, and I'm closing in for a kill shot. This time, aim a little bit better, another solid hit across the tail, and aircraft destroyed. First kill of the match. Kill should have happened about 3 or 4 minutes ago, but I'll take it. So, just quickly checking my 6, nearest target is a Spitfire, only 2 Ks behind. I have a Typhoon cutting just underneath at the moment, so pull it into a sharp climb and then get ready to roll over and drop in on its tail. The Typhoon, however, pulls vertical to come up at me. Now, I'm not going to be able to turn with him. However, I can see the Spitfire is on the tail of an A6M5, and the A6M5 is moving to engage the Typhoon. So it's only fair that I will move to drop in and engage the Spitfire and keep his tail clear. Boom passed, missed the shot unfortunately, but I did force the Spitfire to break off the A6M5, so I can now get some distance, pull back for altitude, and re-engage. Now the A6M5 was unable to engage the Typhoon. The Typhoon is still pursuing me, however I did manage to buy the A6M5 the time it needed to be able to reposition itself to engage the Spitfire on fair grounds. However, that leaves me with a problem at the moment because I've actually overheated my engine. I'm 1 minute and 24 seconds until engine shut down. Thankfully for me, the Typhoon decided to break off and move back to assist the Spitfire in taking out the Zero, but that means I've got to bring this thing back around in order to try and save the Zero as well. So trying to get as much altitude as I possibly can and then throttle to zero. Hopefully the engines will cool down fast enough. Engine temp has dropped, waiting for oil temperatures to drop down. And after all that I wasn't fast enough, the Typhoon booms through and blows the Zero in half in one pass. So now it's me versus a Spitfire and a Typhoon. But my engine temps are back to acceptable levels. Time to put these 20mm to work. Now this is something that I don't recommend doing, however I'm going to do it anyway. I'm willing to bet that I'm a better shot in a head-on with 420mm cannons than either of these two. And I am. Typhoon is dead, so the A6M5 has been avenged, and the Spitfire has had critical damage done to its right-hand side. I'm just going to bring it back around and finish off the job. Now I go to line up this Spitfire pilot here, however he has learnt his lesson rather quickly that 420mm cannons hurt, so he immediately breaks off to the right and throws himself off aim. That's alright. I'll just take it back into the vertical, roll it over, and dive back in. I do have a minor fuel leak at the moment. I'm really not concerned. What I'm more concerned with is myself and a B7A2 are the last two remaining aircraft on the Japanese team, and there are 3 enemy aircraft still alive, including the Spitfire. Now keep in mind, at the time of this battle, I have 2 upgrades. And there's my 3rd kill. So, current assessment at this time, I have slight pinking of the fuselage on both wings, but no noticeable effect in aircraft performance. I've got a slight fuel leak, I've still got 18 minutes on board, it doesn't seem to be leaking out particularly fast, so that's not a great issue. I'm a little more concerned with only having 291 rounds of cannon ammunition on board, although that's still a little over a quarter of the ammunition load for this aircraft, so we should be okay there. Engine is overheating, but I'm clear and clean and clear to cool that down at any time. The biggest issue is it's a 2-on-2 fight, and I'm the last actual fighter remaining for the Japanese team. Now it did cross my mind to head back to B, land and get a repair and rearm, however I thought it best if I tried to end this battle sooner rather than later. A is in the process of being captured, so I figured it was highly likely that both the missing enemy aircraft would be over A, awaiting the ability to land, rearm, refuel and reload. Sure enough, our B7A2 is having it out with the PBJ over the top of the runway, so it's just a matter of time before the last fighter shows up as well. And there's the official cap of A, so they now own a runway. Still no sign of the other fighter, nothing else is popping up on radar, just lining up the PBJ at the moment, 3K's out. At this point the PBJ isn't actually a primary target, it's just that it's the only thing in the area that I can find. Any damage that the PBJ could have done, it already has. It's taken out all of the ground forces around the runway and allowed a capture to happen sooner than expected. There's nothing else on the ground here that it can destroy to drop the ticket counters, and it's so slow there's no way known it would be able to make it to the other runway before I intercepted it and shot it down, even if it had a full load on board and was able to do damage once it got there. So PBJ turns back underneath, loop it over and back into a dive, so I'm getting a better attack angle. PBJs and most of the B-25 variants are one of the odd variants of bombers that's actually safer to approach them from behind, as they have more guns mounted to their nose than anywhere else, but it's best to approach them on an angle while in a yaw, so it makes it hard for the tail gunners to actually be able to lock onto you. Shots across both engines, light him on fire, immediately turn away. Do not sit on the tail. It might be safer to approach from the back end, but do not stay there. And watch him go down. There we go, 4th kill. And that was actually the end of the match. Why the scorecard said that there were 2 enemy aircraft still alive, the last plane had actually been shot down, the pilot had just not been ejected from the wreck. Unfortunately I wasn't able to save the B7 either, which actually makes me the last living player in this match. So let's go check out the results. So, first place for the team with 4 kills, 1,728 points. Shadow Strike Streak, Bomber Rescuer, Ground Forces Rescuer, Avenger, Professional, Win Streak, Final Blow, Terror of the Sky, and Bulletproof. 94,790 Silver Lions, and we're looking at 4,081 research points. And I unlocked the 20mm belts. So not a bad match at all, and as you can see, it's a bloody good aircraft. I really enjoy flying this thing. This has actually gone up as probably one of my favourite Japanese planes. And as you can see here, I only had 2 upgrades on the aircraft. The fuselage repair and the compressor were the only upgrades I had in that battle. Now I've got the 20mm belts unlocked, you can pretty much freely go through and select any of these upgrades in any order that you like. I'm a bit OCD, so I'm going to start at the bottom and work my way up, get the radiator, the airframe, the engine, wings repair, and work it from there. But just get those offensive 20mm belts. So the J2M3, probably one of the most fun aircraft to fly in the Japanese tree. I love this plane, I really do, and I'm looking forward to taking it out in simulation and seeing how it goes there. I think I'm going to continue having a lot of fun with this in the future, and if you haven't unlocked this plane so far, I can't recommend it enough. Anyways, ladies and gents, I hope you enjoyed the video. Click like if you do, subscribe if you want to see more. Fly smart, fly safe, and I'll catch you in the skies.